So we are back. For some reason, we got kicked off, didn't we?
They're listening.
They're listening. They can see us live. So, yes, if you were just watching our previous live stream here on YouTube Live, we're still getting our feet wet with this brand new way to do the Jimmy Rant shows. So, if you're just joining us back, welcome back. We're glad to have you back. We were doing the video, and suddenly it was on my home screen. I didn't really do anything, so I don't know why it did that, but we're going to let a few more people pop on in. Welcome back in, you guys. If you were just watching, we are back. We were trying desperately to figure out what in the world was going on with the live stream, why it kicked us out, but we are back. And if you are just joining us for the first time, or to recap a bit of what we're talking about here, we are addressing, as part of the Jimmy Rants Nutritional Pearls podcast crossover episode today, Christine Moore, NTP. We're addressing that Taubes-Guyenet, Gary Taubes debate that happened on the Joe Rogan Experience. So if you watched that this week, God bless you. Sorry about that.
I still want my 3 hours back.
We did. We spent pretty much the day it came out. We spent 3 hours just sitting like right here listening to that. And it was very interesting. So where we left off, Christine, was we were talking about how it would have been good had Stefan kind of stepped towards Gary's position of hormones, and acknowledged at least that there is a hormonal impact to the foods that you eat that can impact your weight and your health. And then I was saying, and Gary, could probably have said the same thing to Stefan. There is good evidence that a lot of Stefan's concepts from a brain chemistry perspective are exactly what happens when you eat fat and carbohydrates in combination. So the highly palatableness, which is most of what the junk food people eat, is it could have easily been explained with the insulin hypothesis. So how do you marry the two?
So, sugar, it has been proven to light up the same part of the brain that drugs do, the addictive drugs. And so, as far as that premise goes, it's correct. But saying that it's completely that makes you obese,
Yeah.
no, because like I said uh, before, you can have thin people eating these highly addictive foods,
Right.
and they not gain weight. It's still having some effect on it. And see, it goes back to Gary's too. There's still a hormonal impact going on, but
There's always a
but for
hormonal
whatever
impact.
reason, the person has good genetics that they can handle that sort of thing.
Right.
And so that's where I think they don't talk about the genetic factors, and how it's just like with muscle builders. You're not meant
Hang on.
to.
We got a call, guys, and so it stops the video when we got a call.
Oy.
Now go.
So you're not meant to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger if you were to lift weights. You don't have those genetics that makes you predisposed to being able to beef up. I mean, I think it goes the same way with diet. I think that you have a hormonal response with the insulin, but then these food companies have come in and have just made these foods even more palatable, and so it's both theories.
Well, and my problem is when, like you said, there's such it has to be one or the other. It's just frustrating, especially to the consumer who's trying to take the best of both worlds of what both of them are sharing. And it seems like they're both so dug in on their own position. I want to ask Stefan, okay, so what role does blood sugar play at all in your theory? And I would say that blood sugar going up, causing insulin and other hormones to go up, is part of what's contributing to his food reward, highly palatable food theory. The reason the brain goes excitable is because there's been a hormonal response. And then I wish Gary would acknowledge, okay, yes, the hormone insulin is critical. And I know in the interview, it was brought up by Stefan. Well, you're ignoring leptin and its role in this equation as well. He's not, but that's what was brought up.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking it would be good if they would just take a step towards one another, because I think they could coalesce in the middle somewhere around some unified theory that marries both concepts.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about leptin, that's a hormone, right?
I've heard of it, yes.
So, is it the insulin that controls? The insulin is known as the master hormone,
It
right?
is. Although if you talk to Ron Rosedale, he'll tell you leptin plays a bigger role than insulin. But yes,
Yeah.
it's generally known insulin is as the master hormone.
So, yeah. Anyway, it's one of those things. But so you can have somebody that maybe that leptin is, that's the hunger hormone, right? No, ghrelin is the hunger hormone.
Ghrelin is hunger hormone.
Leptin is the other one. So, so you can have these things. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get.
You're rambling, so I'm trying to get you to move
I know,
along.
I'm trying to get my thoughts back together since we got
I
messed
know.
up.
We have a lot of ghrelin that has been activated here with the technical difficulties we've
What
run
I'm
into.
trying to say is these other hormones can be impacted, and yet the person not gain weight. There's
certain people.
Certain people.
Right.
There's a lot of factors that go to. Is a person stressed? Are they getting good sleep? All of these
Right.
things kind of play into how a person is going to gain weight or not gain
Here
weight.
is the other thing that always ticks me off about these debates like this. All of the onus of whatever the modality is, limiting carbs and sugar as a means to control insulin, or limiting highly palatable foods as a means of lowering the food reward system, and Stefan's case, and they always put the onus on weight loss. Why is it always on weight loss? To me, the much more interesting factor is what is whatever that modality is doing to insulin levels? What is that modality, whatever it is, doing to inflammation levels? What is that modality, whatever it is, doing to your A1C? Some like real clear markers of health or not health. Triglycerides would be thrown in there as well. Maybe HDL cholesterol, maybe small dense LDL cholesterol. There's so many markers that, okay, we want to test these theories like this. Let's run them all these specific health markers and parameters, and let's see how the changes happen with whatever the protocol is. To me, that's a lot better way of doing this than simply looking at body weight on a scale to determine whether something's doing good or bad.
So Taubes-Guyenet totally dismisses sugar in that he's saying that it doesn't cause weight gain. I would say that it does.
Well, hang on. To be clear on his position, he didn't say it does not cause weight gain.
Not as fast.
He said very clearly in the interview that it's one of many contributors to weight gain, which we would agree with.
Yeah, yeah. But what I was going to say is that sugar, I think, is a big proponent of cause of other health.
And I can't hold the phone now. Go ahead. Sugar?
Other health issues. So, like, if you have sugar, that causes your body to, the cells in the body to harden when it combines with those proteins. And so
The glycation you're talking
right,
about.
and so your cells harden, and this is what leads to eyesight problems. It
Right.
leads to kidney problems. It leads to people losing their limbs. I mean, diabetes. That's what
Right.
Sugar does. And so, just to, I know that Stefan is saying that it's a multiplicity of things, but it sounds like to me he's kind of downgrading sugar. As
Well, of
not
course he
being-
is, because it does. Well, sugar plays a role in his hypothesis in as much as it's combined with fat. He
Yeah.
thinks sugar alone isn't nearly as addictive and palatable and into his theory as Gary is to his theory that sugar is at the base of why insulin goes up and carbohydrates that turn to sugar in the body, and that we reduce those, we improve health. It's so frustrating, you guys, because we've got these two strong personalities that are both trying to articulate their particular point of view. I wonder if there's a more reasonable insulin hypothesis advocate and a more reasonable kind of calorie apologist that if they redid this exact same debate, would come to a far different conclusion without the contentiousness. That's the thing. I've been in this space for so long. I'm just over. I'm just so sick of the tit for tat. My diet's better than yours. No,
Yeah.
my theory beats yours, because that really helps nobody at the end of the day. And I'm very much in the camp of Gary Taubes and the insulin hypothesis. I definitely believe it's more of the right answer than not. But I don't think Gary did us any favors with the way he came across on video. Um, Neither one of the gentlemen acted like adults here.
No, they didn't. And the thing that we need to remember is that we're all on the same side. We're trying to get people healthy. Yeah, Gary's coming at it from his way, and Stefan's coming at it from his direction. But in reality, we're all on the same side, just trying to get people um, healthy. And something, we can all agree that something needs to be done
Yeah.
about it. I hate even talking about calories. I mean, we don't even need to go there.
Well,
again,
that's a
but
whole nother Jimmy Rant's nutritional pearls for a whole nother day.
Yeah.
But I do think that Stefan's position is very much rooted in calories in, calories out,
Yeah.
because the notion is that the reason you get obese and sick from the highly palatable foods and the changes in the brain chemistry is by the over consumption of calories, and thus that leads to weight gain. What?
No, I was just gonna say. So let's try this. If any of y'all want to be brave and try this, I couldn't do it, or you couldn't do it either.
I wouldn't
So,
do it.
in my opinion, this is where he definitely has it wrong. A calorie is not a calorie. So if I were to have, and I expressed this on my Instagram page, if I eat 1,000 calories worth of Twinkies,
Ew. What is that?
my blood sugar is gonna go up.
What is that, about 12 Twinkies?
I don't know, probably.
Whole box of Twinkies.
My blood sugar's going to go up. My
Doesn't sound
insulin's
fun.
going to go up, and I'm going to have all sorts of
And
problems.
she's going to be bouncing off the walls in the Moore household.
Yeah, exactly. But if I have 1,000 calories of a steak with a nice fatty sauce on it,
Yeah.
and some non-starchy veggies,
Yeah.
my blood sugar's going to remain steady. I'm not going to become grouchy. My insulin's
you will.
going to remain steady, and I am going to remain healthy. So if any of y'all think that calories are all equal, try eating 1,000. Try eating Twinkies for a period of time. See how you do, and then eat steak and non-starchy veggies
Of the same amount of calories, you're saying.
Of calories, and see how you
So
do.
I'm going to throw a monkey wrench in your theory. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
That obviously those two different, they're same calories but different food-like agents would respond differently in the body. But Stefan would say that's proving his theory, because his theory is it's the highly palatable foods that would be the Twinkies. And the Twinkies would be that kind of food that would make you want to eat more and more and more, and thus put on weight. Whereas he would say the steak and the vegetables is not highly palatable, therefore
Who says?
therefore you're
Have
not
you guys ever had bacon? That's highly palatable.
therefore you're not going to get that response. I'm just telling you that's how he would explain that.
No, each of them, Gary and Stefan, would twist things.
Well, I don't know about twist. I mean, it
when I
fits the
say twist-
hypothesis.
No, when I say twist, I mean
Twist
they would,
means you manipulate. So
Yes.
use another word. What do you mean?
mean?
We're going to see how good her linguistic skills are.
You're the English major.
Interpret?
Interpret. They would interpret something a certain way to make it fit their hypothesis or their
Well,
position.
if it fits the hypothesis, then that's fine. I think for Gary, the hormonal response is what would explain that. If you're going to eat a bunch of Twinkies, your blood sugar will go way up. Your insulin will respond in response to that, right?
Yeah.
and you'll have a very clear hormonal response. Whereas with the steak and the vegetables, blood sugar should not spike. Thus, insulin should not go up to great levels, more so than what your body needs to deal with that blood sugar.
So what happens when you have sugar? When you have crappy garbage?
Hunger.
You could even do this like with a teaspoon of honey or just a teaspoon of sugar. What's going to happen 15, 30 minutes, an hour later? You're going to have a
Hunger.
spike in blood sugar, and then it's going to drop. A drop in blood sugar signals hypoglycemia,
Yeah.
and that
And
symptoms of that is hunger, it's
irritability,
confusion,
fatigue. I
sweats.
get really tired real fast when I get
Yeah.
hypoglycemia.
So
But that's
it's
also another hormone involved that's not working properly.
the glucagon.
Right.
So, um, but that's so if you have just like a teaspoon of sugar, you're not having what Stefan would say with those highly palatable foods that's mixed with the salt and the fat. You're just having the sugar,
Right.
but yet you have that sugar, you're going to have that spike in blood sugar, then you're going to crash, and then you're going to become hungry again.
Yeah.
That's why some people, when they have too much protein for their needs, the gluconeogenesis kicks in, their blood sugar goes up, it falls, and then they get hungry.
Part of the challenge in this conversation, you guys, is we're only looking at the impact on the weight. And I think if Taubes-Guyenet and Gary Taub said, okay, let's come up with what those parameters are for determining how we're doing on this particular, whatever the protocol is, be it blood sugar, be it insulin levels postprandial after a meal, because that's huge. Be it inflammation markers like HSCRP, whatever, be it A1C. I think if they all coalesced around what those markers are that are better than weight, because I think weight gets too much weight, all pun intended, as kind of the marker that people are paying attention to. And I realize people want to lose weight, so it's all good. But in this conversation about nutrition, I think if you leave out the health markers, then you leave out the underlying things that are going on that may explain one over the other hypothesis.
Well, I was just thinking back to, I've tried certain foods and I saw a rise in blood
Yeah,
sugar.
talk about it.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking for me, I have seen weight gain. If it's all about the highly palatable foods, he would not consider a sweet potato to be highly palatable. He would not consider rice to be highly palatable. But when I was eating those things, I gained weight.
Well, you didn't gain weight first. What you first had happen, even if you weren't measuring it, was you had a spike in your blood sugar,
Yeah.
which then insulin had to go extraordinarily high.
Yeah.
See, it's kind of the cart before the horse.
Yeah, it is.
You have to say, okay, because insulin went up and other hormonal factors went up as a direct result of blood sugar go up, which is a direct result of the carbohydrates that you ate in your diet. Because you had all that cascade of events happen in your blood markers, you would have seen the obesity happening long before it happened in those blood markers. So
Well,
what
you can't
I'm
see, yeah.
so what I'm proposing is we need to come up with what those blood markers would be that would then be the precursor to the obesity happening. Now, like we said earlier, there are some people that they put on weight and they're hardly eating anything. And then there's other people that are stick thin who could eat pretty much whatever they want and never gain a pound. I think both of those groups are outliers into this.
Yeah.
I think the vast majority of people, they eat carbs, it raises blood sugar, that raises the insulin levels. The insulin starts to become resistant because it keeps getting spiked again and again and again, having to deal with it every single day, and it becomes disordered. And that's when the problems come into play as pounds start getting packed on, health starts to decline. And you would see that in all of those health markers that we just talked about.
And something else to consider too, I think, going back to the Pottinger's cat study, it took 4 generations for the offspring of that original cat to become healthy again.
Right.
So that tells me, okay, let's just say my mother had a very poor diet
Right.
and she got pregnant with me and continued to eat a poor diet.
Right.
That is obviously affecting me. So when
She wrote
I'm
it into
born,
your DNA, you're
so
saying.
yeah, so when I was born, I have a higher likelihood probably of not being able to have certain things
Because of her, not
because of
because of
the
anything you've
damage,
done.
right, because of the damage that has already been
Right.
done to me.
Yeah, so as you guys can see, this is not an easy subject to discuss, which is what made that debate between Gary Taubes and Stefan Guyenet so incredibly frustrating, because it seems like they didn't really acknowledge a lot of what we're talking about here today. All right, I want to see what you guys have to say. See how it's a little bit weird on the
Yeah, it is. Wow.
on YouTube. So bear with me, guys. Yeah, so I missed all of those comments that came in on the original video, so I apologize for that. Slightly Vegan says, I'm all for low-carb diets, but Gary Taubes drives me insane like he drives Evelyn insane. No comment. I can see how people love Gary. I'm a big Durian Rider fan who says to drink sodas and eat white sugar. Yeah, I'll leave that to Durian Rider because that does not work well for me.
I would be so unhealthy if I did that. I'm sorry.
Joke says, I don't know either one of these guys, Gary Taubes or Stefan Guyenet. So if you've been in the nutritional health space for a little while, then you would know who these guys are. They're pretty much leaders in the industry of trying to determine what causes obesity, what causes disease, and that kind of thing. So look them up. Let's see. It would be nice if you could do some blood sugar tests on those competitive eaters that eat 60 hot dogs in 8 minutes, says Joke. Yeah.
Yeah, it would.
I bet it would be funky monkey. Alberto, what's up, man? I'm glad you made it over to YouTube Live. I remember my discussion with someone who commented about Twinkies on Christine's Instagram, about someone eating them for a month and supposedly his health markers were great. So that was Dr. Mark Halb. I've actually had him on the Livin' La Vida Low Carb show, and he didn't just eat Twinkies in the month. Twinkies were a part of his diet, but most of the rest of his diet was relatively a low carb diet. But of course, the media ran with it. Oh, guy ate Twinkies every day for a certain amount of time, and they made it look like that's all he ate. He did a calorie restricted diet, and then he ate low carb foods with the Twinkies. So it wasn't just Twinkies. He would have died because there's no protein or anything good in there. Would eating almonds spike your blood sugar? Because they definitely make me want to eat more of them. They shouldn't. I wouldn't think so. They're not highly palatable.
No.
So it doesn't fit the hypothesis of Stefan. Gary's hypothesis would say they're low carb, so they shouldn't spike your insulin levels.
How
Go
much
ahead.
of it is you craving the food versus like mindless eating?
So it would be a mental thing, not a physiological thing that would make you want to have more and more and more almonds. Yeah, I've never heard of anybody getting addicted to almonds.
Yeah.
I would eat candy bars and not gain any weight, says Shirley, but that doesn't mean it's good for you at all. So, yeah, I mean, some people, they're able to handle the carbohydrate load that would be in a candy bar, but it still would have an effect on blood sugar. Even on somebody who's handling it weight-wise, it would still impact their blood sugar, their inflammation levels, their insulin levels, all of that.
Well, and your thyroid comes into play there because the thyroid controls your metabolism, your metabolic rate. And so you could have somebody that has hyperthyroidism that's undiagnosed, and obviously we saw this in one of our cats. Her metabolism was 20 times higher than a normal cat's.
Yeah.
She would eat and eat and eat
and would not stop eating,
not gain weight.
Yeah.
And so that's just another factor that comes into play. That, do you have thyroid issues?
New Channel says, does that response happen with sweeteners triggering your insulin even without the glucose intake.
Some sweeteners, yeah.
What
I think Ace
sweeteners?
K is one of those. I think that.
Oh yeah. So in my book, The Keto Cure, you can go get it on Amazon. We have a whole list. We have a whole chapter just about sweeteners
Mm-hmm.
and which ones are really really bad. And Ace K, acesulfame, potassium, they tend to put in a lot of kind of diet drinks. It makes them taste sweeter.
Yep.
Alberto said, I noticed that when people go high carb, low fat, typically they'll lose weight, but it's because they're malnourished.
Yep.
Not the same on keto,
Yep.
and they use it as the only proof as to why they're becoming healthy is the weight loss. Alberto, thank you as always. I'm
Yes.
really glad you're back here on my Jimmy Rants because that is a very prescient comment.
It is.
They all want to put the focus on the weight loss, when in actuality, it's the health markers that I think matter far better, far more.
So yeah, these nutrients, if you eat a high carbohydrate diet, you're actually having nutrients, depending on the carbs too.
Yeah.
But if your diet's primarily carbohydrates, you're actually having nutrients taken out of your body.
They're
Yes.
anti-nutrients,
Yes.
a lot of carb-based foods.
Yep.
Slightly Vegan says all these macro ratio debates are silly. I agree with you. I think it's just absurd that we have to argue over, well, I need this percentage of carbohydrate, this percent. Screw you. Just eat food.
Find what works for you.
Yeah.
And if what you're doing currently is working for you,
Yeah.
I say go for it. That's where the bio-individuality comes into play.
Yeah. Oh, there's Olivia Brown. Remember Olivia?
I do.
She says, I'm glad you guys are talking about this. Well, that's why we're here. That's why we do our Nutritional Pearls podcast. I can tell this subject drives you two a little crazy. Yes, a little bit. Slightly Vegan, a little bit. Kim Call says, I'm listening to the Obesity Code. That's Dr. Jason Fung's book on Audible. I was surprised to hear that stevia is low glycemic, but can still raise your insulin level. Love the health with keto. But golly, some weight has got to go eventually, says Darla.
Mm-hmm.
It will.
It will, and try, as I tell my clients who may be discouraged with the weight aspect of it. One particular client, she's seen small improvements, like improvement in energy, improvement in inflammation. So she used to go to a physical therapist for certain things, and now she's not having to do that
That's
because
awesome.
of the ketogenic diet. So I told her, let's not focus, or I tell my clients, don't focus on the weight. Think of those non-scale, as you call them, victories.
Yeah. It's not about the weight. About the weight.
Oh.
See, my inner Megan Trainor came out. New channel says, I just ordered Keto Clarity. Thank you. And the reduction of inflammation on keto has been awesome.
Yeah.
That's the biggest reason.
go.
I think we need to shift it away from so obsessively focusing on the diet and instead focus on what is whatever your diet plan, whatever your modality for getting healthy, what is it doing to specific blood markers? So can we coalesce around blood sugar's a good marker to
Yeah.
test regardless?
Yeah.
Can we coalesce around if you can run your insulin level? And when we have the ability to do that at home, it'll make it a whole lot easier. It's coming, guys.
Yeah.
A few more years away, but it's coming. Can we coalesce around looking at inflammation markers like HSCRP?
Yep.
That's really good. Can we coalesce around triglycerides meaning something? And if they're below 100, definitely optimally below 70, that's a good thing. So then that regardless of what your theory is and regardless of what you choose to do diet-wise, those are the markers you're looking to make sure they're in the optimal level.
Yeah. And this whole weight thing, I totally agree with you. We need to stop focusing on weight because I used to be underweight. You would look at me on the street and say, oh, well, she's healthy because she's so thin.
Right.
No, I was very unhealthy. But
Yes, you
yet
were.
someone looks at you that has a little bit of extra weight.
Yeah.
I would put your numbers up against
Blood
most
markers, you're saying.
blood markers against most people out there that are eating the standard American diet, and I can guarantee you who is going to be healthier.
Joke says not only blood markers, but also blood pressure.
Yes.
And I agree that, yeah, and when I say blood markers, that tends to be the ones that people can focus on, and when they go to the doctor and the doctor freaks out about LDL. Don't freak out about LDL, by the way,
Yeah.
or total cholesterol. But you're right. Blood pressure would be another one of
Yep.
those that would be a clear marker if things are going good or bad for you.
Yeah, so blood pressure can happen for many different reasons, and a big thing is dehydration. So it's just because you have an elevated blood pressure, don't be too concerned about
Hmm.
that. Just make sure you're drinking enough water. But yes, that is one to check as well.
Zoe says, I can only lose weight on keto if I count my calories and keep them under 1,600 a day. I'm just saying, since it's always touted on keto as no need to count calories. Well, I don't think anybody's saying there's, quote, no need to count calories. It's just that when you're eating to satiety and you're eating enough dietary fat, the need to count them becomes less and less and less. And we've seen this vetted out in a lot of research studies that have come out. Volek and Finney are the two preeminent researchers in this realm. And I remember Dr. Volek presented a paper one time at a conference that I attended, and he did two side by side diets. One of the diets was a low fat diet, high carb diet that they put them on 1,800 calories, and then they put the ketogenic end, very low carb, below 20 grams of total carbs a day. And then you basically gave them a set amount of protein, and then said, eat fat, ad libitum,
Mm.
to satiety. And they ended up eating exactly the same number of calories
Mm-hmm.
as the low fat end of things, and they lost more weight. They had more improvements in a lot of the health markers that we've talked about here today. So if you find that counting your calories and keeping them below 1,600 is working for you, then go for it. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's great. And if that keeps you very structured, that's great. But at some point, let your body tell you when you've
Mm.
had enough or not
I
enough.
was just going to say, we have gotten so used to, because we eat by the clock, we have forgotten how to listen to our bodies. And, I tell my clients, do what works for you,
Yep.
as far as keeping track. If you want to keep track of the macros, fine, do that. If not, don't worry about it. Um, I think the thing that I focus on first is making sure that I get enough fat in my diet. And your
Hmm.
body will let you know if you don't have enough fat, because you will be hungry
Right.
really quickly after your previous
Hormonally,
meal.
it'll hit you
So
fast.
your brain needs fat, your hormone production needs fat. You need fat for a proper immune response. You need fat to properly digest food. So that's the first thing that I focus on. And then I just listen to my body.
Hmm.
And so for me, I don't worry about counting calories, because I've gotten to the point where I can listen to my body. If I'm hungry, I will eat. If I'm thirsty, I'll
Yeah.
drink. And if I'm not hungry or thirsty, I won't eat or drink.
Right. Gee, imagine that. Alberto says some food and supplements stimulate the secretion of insulin without having any spike in your glucose. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
As your experiment with high protein. Yeah, last year I did
Yeah.
a 3-to-1 protein to fat ratio, no carbohydrates, all animal based foods, and I had issues with my insulin going up. No glucose spike, but a hypoglycemic effect. Yeah, I had 15 bouts of hypoglycemia last year.
Yeah.
Yes, intuitive eating is my next goal, says Zoe. Excellent.
Yeah.
Counting
It takes
calories.
time to get to that point.
That's right. Counting calories is a relatively new concept, says Alberto. Yeah, if
Mm-hmm.
you ask our great grandma, which would have been right about what 100 years ago, our
Yeah.
great grandmothers were around.
Yep.
Would they have counted calories
Mm-mm.
ever,
No.
ever, 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 ever,
Nope.
ever? Slightly Vegan says, I've gotten healthy listening to both high carb and low carb camps. And that's what I'm trying to say here today. Thank
Yep.
you for that, Slightly Vegan.
Yep.
I think both have merit. I
Mm-hmm.
think both offer incredible contributions to the community. Let's don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to
Right.
speak.
And that's one thing that I want to get across, and that's why I said that Gary has his stance, Stefan has his stance, but we're all on the same side. Whether you're ketogenic, whether you're high fat, or whether you're high
Right.
carbohydrate, if it's working for you, great. And each position has their merits, that you can learn something from anybody.
Olga says fat also delays the glucose response, which is
Yes,
true.
it does. Yeah.
Everybody always talks about fiber with that. Oh, eat fiber and it'll delay the glucose response. I'm like, yeah, but it's still a carbohydrate. At least fat is a way to delay the response without adding additional carbohydrate.
And depending on your metabolic status, even the fiber in some people can cause problems.
Yeah. JG says I only count the sum of protein and net carbs. I call it NCP. The next best-selling diet book, The NCP Diet by JG. I eat 100 to 105 NCPs per day, doing well with that. Don't really care about the calories or the fat.
Yeah,
Interesting.
as long as you're feeling well, just know that the fat is very important for your body. We need it for so many things. So if you start to experience problems, look at your fat. But yeah, if what you're doing is working for you, yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, guys, the bottom line in this Jimmy Rant's Nutritional Pearls podcast crossover episode is you're going to hear a lot of kind of debates like the Gary Taubes and Taubes-Guyenet debate that happened this week on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. It was great exposure for those guys. Joe has the 4th most listened to overall podcast in the entire world. Jimmy Moore would love to be on there.
Could you interview somebody for 3 hours like that?
I don't think I've done, the longest I've done as far as a podcast interview was 1 hour and 48 minutes. It was Dr. Steve Finney.
Well, that's understandable.
I was going to say, if it's a talker, then maybe, but
you just wind him up and let him go.
But Joe, you could tell in that show, he was getting very frustrated because he was hoping that they could coalesce around some unification of theories, but neither one of them was having anything of it. But what I want to say here is what our commentary is saying is, listen to all the sides, get all of the information, and then at the end of the day, figure out what's applicable to you. Maybe there's something that Gary said that applies to you, but doesn't apply to someone else. Maybe there's something Steven said, still can't believe he couldn't say Taubes-Guyenet, that applies to you, but not to someone else. And that's okay. It goes back to what we talk about so often here on Jimmy Rant's and Nutritional Pearls podcast is bioindividuality. We are all different. And, people, we have to celebrate that. We just have to celebrate the differences that we have.
We can all agree that there is a healthcare crisis and that something needs to be done about it. There you go.
Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? So, guys, Christine, thanks for joining us again today on your show, the Nutritional Pearls podcast.
Thank you.
And, guys, that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. And if you like the show, we're starting to do them now here on YouTube Live. And if my phone doesn't explode and kick me off again, we're going to try to do this on a consistent basis.
Thank you for being patient with me while I got my thoughts back together after the crash.
we were quite thrown off our game. So check it out, you guys. We do a couple times a day here on Jimmy Rants. We do a couple of Jimmy Rants episodes where I just go off on some topic. If some stupid headline is out there, I'm addressing it. If it's something interesting that's on my mind, I try to address it here as well. So jimmyrants.com, if you want to check out the work that I've been doing, go and look at the past episodes. We got them right there embedded right there at jimmyrants.com. We also have a podcast for this show. If you'll go ahead and listen to it, it's on Apple Podcasts as well as Stitcher. And again, those links, you guys, are at jimmyrants.com. And Joke says no lack of material on stupid headlines. No, there's not. Sadly, no. So, guys, until next